Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to today's at-home video boot camp with We Dallas and the Slate. Sorry we are a little late getting started. We were having some technical difficulties. Welcome to the world of virtual events and life in our new normal. So we appreciate y'all's patience. Definitely does not go unnoticed, so thank you for that. My name is Delaney Majors. I am the manager of events and programs at the DEC Network. The DEC is a 501c3 that helps entrepreneurs start, build, and grow their businesses through resources, mentorship, networking, connections, and events just like this. This event, We Dallas, is a program we have been doing for a couple years now with Capital One. We Dallas actually stands for Women Entrepreneurs Dallas. So all of the programming is tailored specifically to our female entrepreneurs in North Texas, and about bringing you programs and events that are specifically tailored to you and can support our female entrepreneurs in the area. Last year, when we were thinking about, okay, what do we want to bring to We Dallas 2020? A video workshop was really on that list. The Slate has always been a great partner, and we thought of them as a perfect partner to execute this. And when we sat down and thought about what do we want this to look like, we thought, let's take these women through step A to Z of videos. So prepping the script, storyboarding. How do you actually make it on a low budget or something accessible like your smartphone? And then not only that, now you have this video, how do you market it? What do you do with it? So we really wanted to take our audience through that entire process. Of course, when we were planning this, it was back in 2019 before COVID. And then once all this happened, we thought, how can we do this still? How can we continue to do this in our new normal and virtually? So that's kind of where we are now. We're bringing this to you virtually, even though we can't be with each other in person. That being said, I did want to run through a bit of the agenda today and kind of how to use this platform, Hopin. We will start here on the stage with Mike, and he'll run you through some tips and some information about how to, actually produce a video on your smartphone. So we'll start here on the stage. After Mike's presentation, we will move to the Sessions tab. If you look to your left, there is a toolbar that can take you to the sessions, and there we will have two sessions, one led by Shelly Slather, co-founder of the Slate, and one led by Cleo Green, an anchor at WFAA. So make your way to the sessions after this presentation from Mike. After the sessions, we will come back to the main stage, where Leah Frazier will talk through all video marketing 101 and all things such as that. So that will be great. And then also, if you ever have any questions at any time, we will be doing Q&As, and especially in your sessions, you can interact with Cleo and Shelly. So please use the chat box over to your right. You'll see that you can toggle between the stage and the event. To talk specifically in this stage, make sure you're on the stage toggle. But we will be monitoring those and be looking for your Q&As. And then lastly, also stay all the way till the end. We are having a video competition where we're giving away 2 free video mini sessions at the Slate. I'll give more information about that at the very end of the event today. So make sure you stay all the way to the end to learn more about that. And then, of course, thank you for being here. We know events already, take up time, and they're not always, first of our mind when we have so many things going on throughout our day, and even more so in a virtual world. So we appreciate you taking time and spending some of your day here with us. And then, of course, we thank our speakers for spending their time with us as well. But with that, I will go ahead and pass it off to Mike, who can tell us a little bit more about Capital One and then dive into his presentation for today.
Thank you very much. So I think, Robin, if you want to jump on, I think you were going to set the stage a little bit about Capital One's involvement. That would be super helpful.
Of course. Good morning. I'm happy to. My name is Robin Strong, and I've been partnering with the DEC and We Dallas for about the last 3 years. This is our 6th-year partnership with the DEC and the Women's Dallas Women Entrepreneurs programming. A lot of people don't realize that Capital One, we were actually still founder-led. So many years ago, we were kind of right in your shoes. We were a small startup business, and now we've grown and to love all of our startup partners and our small businesses. We just truly have a passion. We have partnered with many successful startups and are always working to understand the unique challenges and opportunities that business faces every day, so we can build solutions and experiences designed to help you guys all succeed and grow. So that is kind of one of the things that brings us here today with Mike. He's going to walk you through a little bit of a video boot camp and kind of get you some new tips and tricks on how to upgrade your videos or even get started in a video type of virtual setting in our new virtual world. So thanks so much for being with us today, Mike, and I will pass it back over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. Apologies for the technical difficulties. That's unfortunately what happens sometimes nowadays. We are working diligently to get the presentation up and running. There's some definitely beneficial things, I think, that for you to see rather than for me to talk to you. But if we aren't able to get the presentation up, close your eyes and think about the greatest presentation you would have ever seen, and that's about what it would look like. It would definitely be a lot better than my ugly mug standing here right in front of you. But so today we're going to talk about all of the great things that you can do with your smartphone and the great video work that you can actually do with your smartphone. We're going to talk about some content basics. We're going to talk about equipment. Then we'll quickly roll through recording, think about things like framing, lighting, and editing. And then if we have time, which I doubt we will because of the technical difficulties, we'll do a quick Q&A. So I'm going to run through this best I can to be as visual as I can, but bear with me and we'll get through it. So, you know, the first thing that I would tell anyone, and this is true of any business that you're doing. This is not just about video. This is literally about anything you'll ever do, and that is know your audience. You always have to think about who's watching, why they care, why should they care, are they consumers, are they professional, are they a mix of both? That will constantly dictate how you tell your story. So if you do not start by knowing your audience, you're already putting yourself behind the eight ball a little bit. And then, of course, knowing your audience also means where is your audience? And there are now more ways than ever to share content, as I'm sure many of you already know. You know, there's no less than 10 really prevalent social media platforms, and you know, 3 or 4 times that amount if you count all the like second tier and third tier players. But I think, you know, primarily what you have to think about are your big heavies, which are your Facebooks, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your YouTube. And then if you're in my age bracket, there's these new things called TikTok and Snapchat, which I am not on, but my kids are. And knowing where they are actually significantly can impact your content because, you know, if you've done video at all on your smartphone, you've probably run into somebody asking or telling you, hey, turn your phone sideways, right? i.e. vertical video versus the traditional horizontal video. All of the ones I mentioned pretty much will take your vertical video. Of the ones I mentioned, TikTok and Snapchat are almost exclusively vertical. You very rarely see horizontal or traditional video on TikTok or Snapchat. But all of the other ones I mentioned, definitely you can do vertical video. However, I would strongly suggest if you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or specifically YouTube, I would highly recommend keeping it in the more traditional aspect ratio, which is horizontal. So I mentioned knowing your audience. That's super critical. But the first step of that is make them care. You know, and as I'm sure many of you probably know already, the average time a person spends on a video, watching a video on social media is 10 seconds or less. That doesn't necessarily mean you got to try to cram all your content in 10 seconds. I would not recommend that. That usually produces really diminishing returns. So there's a great old saying that I like to apply that's be quick, but don't hurry. And, you know, tell your story and don't rush it, but you do have to make them care. You've got to front load things pretty quickly up front. And then if you're the person that's on camera, I highly encourage you to rehearse, because how you say it matters just as much as what you say, and you're probably not going to get it right the first time. So it's not like the old days where you're shooting on video and you're literally burning money with every take. That doesn't exist. So rehearse, look at it, and make sure you get it right, and kind of be hard on yourself. And then at the end of the day, it's always good to show. Sometimes we're not going to have the budget to show all of the things, and we're going to have to rely on straight up narrative on camera. But when you can, show is just as powerful, and sometimes more powerful than tell. The great example I always give about this is, if you've ever seen the movie Up, the first 10 minutes is no dialogue, and it is all showing, and it basically spans an entire lifetime of Carl and his wife, and cry every time I watch it. And that's really powerful storytelling. And that's a great example of show, don't tell. Second thing is, in traditional narrative, if you've ever done plays or anything, you've always heard the term 3-act structure. Try to follow that as best you can. Beginning, middle, and an end. There's a reason it works, right? It's the beginning is typically when you're going to set up your characters, you're going to set up the who, what, and why. In the middle, you're going to get them into trouble, and in the end, hopefully, you have some resolution. So when in doubt, try to follow that. And then sometimes, as you're working through it, it's even a good thing to take that beginning, middle, and end within each of those 3 acts. So the beginning kind of has 3 acts, the middle has 3 acts, and the end has 3 acts. There's and one of the other critical aspects to storytelling is, if you've ever read or heard the name Neil Gaiman, he's a very prolific writer. I took his master class, and one of the things that came away from that was he always tries to write something that leaves the reader or the viewer asking, and then what happened? And that's a great way to think about as you're telling a story. Is your reader or viewer intrigued enough to want to know what happened? And that builds on the thing I said earlier about make them care. And then lastly, in the 3-act structure, if that seems kind of daunting to you, the simplest way to do that is think about 3-act structure, but read some fiction and watch movies. They follow that format religiously, and reading fiction and watching movies will help you be a better storyteller, because in the end, that's what you're doing. You're telling a story. And I can't tell you how many times I've actually been at other entrepreneur workshops or technology conventions or startup conventions, and heard people in business that have been successful, that have encouraged other entrepreneurs to actually read fiction and become better storytellers, because it does help you sell your story. Because at the end of the day, when you're starting a company or you're trying to promote yourself, you're telling your story. So that's the content basics in a nutshell. Know your audience, make them care, and when in doubt, follow the 3-act structure. Also, the structure also gives you kind of a really great starting point for an outline: beginning, middle, and an end. So the next thing I'm going to go through is some equipment. Now, I do have a PDF that we'll send out that has all of the equipment I'm about to talk about, with links to where you can purchase them. I know the byline for this class says, hey, you don't have a budget of $5,000. And some of you may have zero budget, and that's fine. You don't necessarily need it. So these are just suggestions, but these are all pretty modest budget. I think that the grand total, if you bought everything, there's kind of 4 pieces of equipment. It's like $250 or less all in. The first thing is a smartphone video kit. It comes with a little handheld rig, an LED light. And the most important thing, if you're going to buy anything, I would highly recommend buying a wireless lav kit that can connect to your phone, because audio is the one thing that is going to give you a lot more flexibility with producing videos from your smartphone. And I'll talk more about that later. The second piece of equipment is a tripod. And by the way, that smartphone video kit, the grand total on that is $146. The tripod that I have listed is $60. This is also going to give you some flexibility, because you don't have to hold it. You can stand further away. If you're taking beauty shots or B-roll, which I'll talk about later, this gives you the ability to hold it very, very steady. and it's another very valuable piece of equipment. The LED ring light is also something that you've probably seen people use these. This is the one thing that YouTubers and social media people use a lot. There's some that literally are powered from the phone. You can plug it into the phone, and it's basically a circular ring that emits light. And this can really help. It does wonders and it's usually dimmable, so you can make it really bright or less bright. And it does really well for the face. And it also, the other thing that can't be overlooked, it creates this nice little ring light flare in your eyes, which kind of gives you that glint in your eyes that you often hear people talk about. And that can be, it's a subtle thing, but it really works. And then the last thing, which is the thing you probably don't need unless you're doing a lot of B-roll for your smartphone videos, it's a gimbal, which is basically a Steadicam, and it's a thing that allows you, smartphone mounts here, and you can do all of this, and it basically holds the camera really steady. So if you're going to do a lot of tracking shots or motion shots, it can really take your production value up quite a bit. And it's the one I have recommended here is $60. You can get them for $10. They're not as good, but that's something that you should consider. So again, just to summarize, LED ring light, potentially a gimbal, smartphone video kit, highly recommend the Lav, and then a tripod. So next we'll talk about recording, and this can be something that new people can struggle with. So, the amount of quality you can get from your smartphone is unbelievable. I mean, the fact that you can shoot 4K now, some phones even 6K, is ridiculous. The thing I will tell you is don't feel compelled to shoot 4K or 6K. In most cases, it is actually not needed. And what you'll find is if you shoot a bunch of 4K footage and 6K footage, it chews up lots of hard drive space. And then also, if you continue to edit there, it'll chew up lots of hard drive space on your computer or your phone. And then it also chokes up a lot of bandwidth if you try to stream it. So I would really strongly, unless you have a strong need to shoot 4K, I would go to either HD, which is standard high definition of 1920 by 1080, or 720. Both consume way less hard drive space, and bandwidth is not an issue. Of course, if you're in an area that has like 5G that can handle 4K, fine. But again, knowing your audience, you got to think about your audience. If you're somebody that's doing something that appeals to people that are out in the sticks, well, they probably aren't going to have the best internet access. So those are things that you got to think about when you're recording. Audio, like I said earlier with the lav mic, audio is one of the things that separates the pros from pretenders, and it's the thing that's kind of often overlooked, but it's the thing that, like I said earlier, having a wireless lav will allow you to have a lot more flexibility with where and what you can shoot. And the thing is, if you do not have a lav, you're almost always going to be confined to having exactly the framing that you see here, and you're going to have to be about this distance from your phone, because the further I go back, you can tell the audio starts to sound bad. And so if you don't have a lav, you're never really going to be able to change your framing. And having that wireless lav will allow you, and if you have a tripod or if you set it on a table, don't want to get the tripod, I mean, you can stand back 20, 30 feet and your audio is going to sound just as good as it does here. And then another thing that a lot of people will often overlook is the background noise. And the more expensive lav mic you get, the better it will be and the higher quality, and it won't pick up a lot of background noise like wind, especially if you're outside. But most editing, if you're using iMovie or Premiere or Final Cut or any of the editing software, has really easy to use background noise removal on audio. So I would strongly recommend you applying that too. You'll get better quality audio out of that.
Hey, Mike, one quick question. We have a
Yep.
question from the audience. Can you explain what a lav stands for, and just talk a little bit on the purpose of a lav, and just kind of go back to that basic step of what a lav is, what it stands for, how it works?
Yes. So I'll tell you, it's short for lavalier. I actually don't know the etymology behind that. I don't know that that helps anything. That's just what it's called. But what it is, the other term, which actually I probably should have used because it's a little more intuitive, is a lapel mic. And it's the little mics that clip on your lapel. And they'll have a transmitter, which is what, you'll clip it here, and then you'll put the transmitter in your pocket, in your back pocket on your belt, and then the receiver, which will connect to your phone. And it's basically transmitting the audio wirelessly from the microphone on your lapel into your phone. So hope that helps. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Do you have a preferred brand that you recommend?
I mean, look, it depends on your budget. I mean, you can get a Shure, which is SHURE, which are really good. Sennheiser, which is SENN Heiser. Those brands, but the higher up you go, the more expensive it can get. I mean, those mics I just mentioned can get into the $150, $200 range. But just do your research. And the other thing is just make sure it's smartphone compatible. When you start getting into really, really high-end video, you can actually record audio separately and sync it up when you're editing. But I wouldn't recommend that for beginners at all. But just having any lav mic, and again, the one in that kit, which the kit is $154, it's not a high-quality lavalier mic, but just having that, like I said, opens up the flexibility, because now you're not constrained to being right here in the frame and this close, so that you make sure you're getting good quality audio. I can go stand in the back of the room with the lapel mic, and it'll sound exactly the way it sounds here. Now, this is the part that's going to get a little tricky, because this is one of those things that's definitely easier to show than tell. But I want to talk about framing a little bit. So and a lot of this stuff, if you're taking notes, you can Google some of these terms and see a visualization of what I'm talking about. But there's a thing in framing called the rule of thirds. And basically what it is there's exactly what it sounds. There's these imaginary lines that go across vertically that divide the frame up into 3 sections. And then there's 2 that run horizontally that divide it into 3 sections. And it's always good to kind of think about that as you're framing. Like right now, the way the framing on this image is, the vertical lines would kind of fall right here where my shoulders are. And then the horizontal lines would typically you always want your eye line on that top, which is, the line where your eyes are on that top third line. And then down here is where the lower thirds, anything below here. And that's an industry term that, when you see titles, sometimes the titles are referred to as lower thirds. That's just because they usually put titles down below the lower third of the screen. But it's always a good guide to make sure you have good framing, because otherwise, if you don't, sometimes you end up like this, or you end up like this, where you're look like you're in a cavern. And you think about, this doesn't convey a lot of confidence if I'm watching somebody where there's a lot of screen. But something like this with good framing conveys a lot of confidence in the person that's the center of the frame. Now, if you're going to do any kind of interview style, where you see this all the time in news segments, on TV exposés, where they're being interviewed by someone off camera, so they're not actually looking at the camera, where they're doing something like this. In that case, rather than center them, you want to give them what's called look space, because if I center here and I'm looking off camera, it doesn't quite look right. So typically, if you're looking this way, you want to put that first line, again, right kind of almost where their eyes are. And then if they're looking this way, then you're going to kind of put them and split that other third line there. Again, it's a lot easier to show in the presentation, but you should be able to get the picture. Rule of thirds is a really great, easy thing to think about as you're framing up your shots. Also think about the background. There's one thing I would tell anybody who's new to videos: get away from the wall, because everybody always has a tendency to shoot their videos literally right up against a wall. Now, if you're using a green screen, like if you've been on Zoom, which everybody's now become a Zoom master, they have that functionality where you can do a custom background. And and it's not as bad, but contrast is really key there. And you can see sometimes when colors don't match, you get that weird ghosting effect, or hands come up and their hands disappear. If you're not using any kind of background like that, getting away from the wall always just makes a really, really stronger, more dynamic look. And then also you have to think about, kind of going back to the rule of thirds, like think about where things are in the frame. And you typically want to stay away from having things in the background that are popping out of people's heads, like a plant or a tree or things like that. Always kind of put them off to the right or the left. And then also remember to, if you're going to use titles, always when you're shooting, remember to leave room, because if you end up shooting and you're in the moment and you want to get something really close like this, now if I put titles in, it's going to be over somebody's mouth. So you always have to remember, if you're using, if you're going to implement titles, make sure you leave room in your framing to pull titles in. Another thing, if you're going to be on camera, I can't stress this enough too. We're producing a documentary for a product launch that we have at Capital One, and I've had to have this conversation with several people, even people who are pretty prolific on social media. Look at the lens, not yourself. And it's really hard to do, because when you're recording and you have your phone up, if you've got it in selfie mode, it's like a moth to the flame. You kind of want to have a tendency to look at yourself. And again, I have an example in the deck, so it's easier to show. But what ends up happening, if you look at yourself, it kind of looks like this. Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm going to tell you all about this great new product, blah, 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 because you end up looking at yourself. So you got to look at that, look for the lens, which is typically up here in the horseshoe. If you look at the lens, it will look like you're looking at the camera. And the other way to think of it is, now, like right now I'm looking at the lens, I'm not looking at my deck, but if I start looking at my deck and I'm looking and reading from my deck, there's a big difference. So always try to remember to look at the lens. That's a pretty big takeaway. Lighting is also really critical, and this is another thing that can really step up production. There's a really tried and true system. Again, you can Google this and get some images, called the 3-point lighting system. If you were to buy everything on the equipment list, you would almost have enough lights to do, because you would have 2 lights. You could buy a third, and they're very, very cheap. But I'll walk through how you can run if you don't have lights and still kind of utilize the 3-point lighting system. But basically, what it is you have your key light, which if your camera is here, your key light is usually going to be over here, and it's going to be the majority of the if it's intensity, and it's going to be providing the majority of the light. In this case, like right now, actually, what I have set up, I have a lamp over here that is kind of it's providing the majority of the light. That would be my key. And then you have a fill light, which is usually further back, and it's providing 50 to 40% of the light. In this case, I actually have a monitor that is providing some of that fill, and I'll show you the difference without the monitor. That's what it
Hey, Mike, quick interruption. We lost your audio. Nice. Nope, still nothing. I think he's going to try coming in and out really quickly. Let's see.
Are you there now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Yay, technology. Can you hear me now? We good?
We're good.
Yeah,
You're good.
Yep.
Where did I leave off?
I lost you after when you were talking about the lights, so it's been a few. I got you through backlight, and then you kind of dropped out after that.
Okay, I'll quickly go back. So right now, if you don't have access to lighting, right now I have a lamp to my right, which is pretty much my fill or my key. I have a monitor that is providing my fill, and then the windows are providing my backlight. And these are not professional video lights, but they do a serviceable job. So if all you really need to do, and again, you can Google kind of the where to place lights and how they're typically placed. You can Google visual reference, but if you can understand that, that'll put you at a big advantage, because you've got an infinite light source 8 to 10 hours a day outside in the sun. That always provides lights. You can use a window like I'm using. The only thing I would really strongly encourage you is, there's a reason backlight is usually only 20%, because too much backlight just overpowers everything. And I'm sure you've seen it where somebody tries to take a picture, with the sun in the background, and you can't see even their face because the sun is just so overpowering, and the camera typically is trying to compensate that, and it dials the aperture way down. And then that just means you can't even see anyone's face. So you never want your backlight to be overpowering your key or your fill. And again, just embrace what you have. There's a lot of stuff that you have at your disposal as far as lighting. Just understanding what the where to placement and how they work just will do wonders. So now I want to move into editing, and this is really unfortunate because I had some really great examples to show you. But when you're editing, there's a rule in editing that says always make an edit and always make a cut on action. And what that means is, if I'm having a shot here and I grab a cup of coffee and I take a sip, that's actually a great place to make a cut. And if I wanted to change the camera angle, so I could have my camera here, record me taking a sip, putting it down. I can change the angle, move it over here, and do the exact same thing. And you can cut to that camera, and cutting on either the picking up of the cup or the putting in the down of the cup, it doesn't necessarily have to match exactly, although you don't want to do the thing where now when you switch camera, now you're coffee in your other hand. But if you do the same action, make your cut there, switch the camera, nobody will ever tell them, it will look really, really seamless. Now, all that to be said is, a jump cut is typically where it's cutting and it's not on any kind of action. And that's where, if you've seen YouTube channels, and there's a whole bunch of really successful YouTubers who have almost kind of turned this into a style. It's always been frowned upon initially as kind of an error, but that's where you see people talking and then they make a cut and it's just their heads over here. And then I said this, and then I said this, and then I said this. And they've turned it into a style. That doesn't mean rules are made to be broken. You can definitely do that. But if you're trying to show it professional and you're not doing it for effect, one of the things you can do is it's a jump cut, but it's a zoom cut. And so what you would do is if you're shooting, even if your definition, you can push in, which means you can zoom in on your recording, usually 30 or 40% without losing any kind of image quality. And if you just zoom in, if you've got a 2-minute video and you got to take out 10 seconds, but you don't want to jump because your head was here and then it's here when you make that cut, just zoom into the image and the head movement won't be as noticeable. So again, there's some great examples in video to share, but it's tough to talk through without showing you visually what it looks like. And then transitions are something that are really easy to do. And the examples I have, we're going to show you, we're all pretty much in camera or just using a bit of in camera and some native transitions in any of the editing software that's available now, like wipes and fills and things like that you can do some really cool things. One of them, which I've seen done a lot, we've used it before, and it's in one of the examples that I was going to show you, is the camera fill, where I could be talking here and then I go, hey, and then what I do is the next scene I'm going to cut to, I have them start with their hand over the lens and then they come back. So what you would do is, if I'm talking, I'm going to go, hey, we'll see you in a minute. Then I'm just going to make my cut right there, and then I'm going to pick back up, and now I'm in a different location. That's a really easy transition to do, and it looks great. I've seen it done where the camera actually moves into the person or into their face. Wipes can be used to great effect. And those are all things that can cover edits and cover jump cuts. You can also go to slides. If you're conveying information, it's totally fine to go to a slide where you're using your voice is still being heard, but you're using a slide to convey bullet points of whatever the key takeaways are. B-roll is another great thing. You see this all the time on the news. Movies use it, and that's where that's a technical term for, like, when somebody's talking and then they're still talking, but you see, like, if I was talking about, hey, if we were going to set up lights, here's what you would do. You would take your key light and you would put it here, and then we would cut to a shot of me just setting up a light. Those are really easy, great things to do to take your videos up another notch. And again, there's a whole bunch of really, really great tutorials on YouTube that walk through a lot of this stuff. All you have to search is jump cuts, zoom cuts, B-roll, how to shoot great B-roll, and there's a million great examples that can really show you kind of what I'm talking about. That pretty much runs the presentation. I know we're probably a little bit over. If we have time for Q&A, we can, or if we need to get caught back up, we definitely can. And like I said, I have that PDF with links to all of the equipment that Delaney can send out to everybody.
Yes, I have one question for you, Mike, and then we will get everyone into their sessions. Elaine asked that is about your editing. She wants to know, is it better to take a long take, assuming that there are no errors, or shorter takes with cuts, or shorter ones with cuts?
It depends on what you're trying to convey. I think, if you're trying to convey something with a lot of emotion, I think you always have to hang on. You should never cut to B-roll or anything else if somebody's really making a great point or conveying a lot of emotion, because you want to see them say it, right? You want to see their face and see them express it. In that case, sometimes it's a little bit better to go with the long take or cut to a close-up. But it really just depends on the piece. I think that for most things on social media, I think anytime you can implement alternate camera angles is probably better, because it does tend to give you your production a little bit higher production value by having different camera angles, or even if it's just zooming in or literally moving the camera forward, that tends to give you higher production value.
Thank you, sir. Delaney, we'll kick it back over to you.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry about the issues with the deck. I promise you it was going to be the greatest thing you've ever seen.
It definitely was. No, sorry about that, guys, and thank you for your patience. This is a new normal, as I've mentioned plenty of times, but we will be able to send that presentation and this recording after the event. So we will have that sent your way afterwards. So for right now, we are on to the sessions portion of our event. So take this time now to use that toolbar in your left-hand corner to click your sessions, and there will be 2 sessions to choose from. One with Shelly Slater about prepping for your video, getting ready, and really all that kind of good stuff. And then also with Cleo Green from WFAA, and she will be sharing more about on-camera confidence. You can also switch back and forth between the 2 if you want to stay in one for maybe about 5 minutes, the other one for maybe another 10. You are welcome to do that. There will also be the chat feature in there, as well as some features where you can actually get on screen and talk with those presenters. So as I mentioned, use that toolbar over to your left. I don't know which way is it's my left over here, but don't know if that displays correctly on the screen. I know they mirror things a lot. But yeah, use that toolbar on your left, head over to sessions and click the session of your choice. After that, come back here to the stage and we will finish up with our presentation from Leah Frazier. Thank you guys. Bye.